Okay, everybody. I said I was going to give five, but I'm starting to get antsy. So I think it's probably time to kick off.
Okay, yeah, I'll just start things real quick. Just want to welcome everyone on behalf of the Northwestern Center on Law, Business, and Economics. It's great to see everyone here today. And then real briefly, it's going to turn it over to Director of the Workforce Science Project, Deborah Weiss. Deborah?
Thank you, Derek. We're delighted to see you all here. And we would like you to put any questions you have in the chat and we will try to answer them. And as you can see, please put your LinkedIn profile in so we can all meet each other. And with that, we have a fabulous panel today, and I'd like to welcome our moderator, Richard Rosnow, the VP of People Analytics Strategy at One Model, to take us through this journey. Richard.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening to those of you in London who have joined us. Thank you for everybody around the world that's kind of tuning in here today. We have a tremendous call today. We've got a call with Anthony Ferraris, who's the head of People Analytics at Pinterest, and Chris Coleman, who leads up the People Analytics function at Western Governors University. Thank you both for joining us today. I won't spend a lot of time introducing them because I really want them to introduce themselves because they've got tremendous backgrounds, interesting thoughts to share, and a couple open roles that are coming up or thoughts about open roles. So we're going to have an interesting conversation today. I'll emphasize again what Deborah said about the chat. I've got less questions today. So for those of you that joined us before, I've tended to run out the clock a little bit on that. And I want to make sure we're getting some really good questions from the audience too. So start putting them in there now. We'll start collecting them. If you've got things that come up along the way, please put the questions in the chat. That'll help us out and it'll be a really fun conversation then. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guests here today. I've got a question for you both to kind of kick things off and maybe go a little bit of a different direction than maybe kind of a standard introduction. But I would love to hear about how did you find out about people analytics as a career? And have you seen those avenues or ways that people find their way in here change over time? And I'm actually going to throw that to Anthony first. Anthony, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to share my thoughts and my open roles here. You know, I started in this field a long time ago. I kid with Richard that like the first couple of years of our time in people analytics, that's when we met. So we were both very early on, years ago. But when I started in this, you know, the term people analytics really wasn't popular. It wasn't being used a whole lot. I think Google was the only company that was using the term. Around that time, they were starting to talk about it a little bit. And I was at a consulting firm trying to implement what I've learned in IO psychology to the organization. But the best way that I could do it is to use data, mining data to understand, you know, what's the challenge and how can I help the organization. And I was fortunate enough to be part of this boutique small consulting firm who allowed us to find our own path, figure out like how to help our clients. And so I was doing people analytics at the time. And when Google started talking about what they were doing, I said, yes, that's absolutely what I want to do. It's really interesting to me. It's, you know, it's data. I love research. I love all those things. At the time, I'm embarrassed to say that, you know, our only tool was Excel, but we made it work. And I never looked back. It's such a passion area for me. And that's really how I found it. Really interesting to see it grow over the years. And what I've seen it, the different entry points, it's definitely grown. It's no longer, you know, IO psychologists, social scientists who are coming into this. There's lots of different entry points into people analytics. It's certainly a popular area, and it continues to be a popular area for lots of different entry points. Back then, you know, there wasn't education around or training around this. So it was like people like me or Richard who would go out and do conferences and talk about it. I don't do it as often anymore, but that was fun. And now there's just these certificate programs, incredible certificate programs, trainings, others like me or Richard who are more than willing to talk to people who are interested in getting into the field.
That's awesome. Yeah, Anthony, I love the kind of you were doing kind of IO, data, consulting, passion for people. It's like you got all the ingredients and realized you had this recipe. It's because it's a lot of the background of what we're looking for in this space, and that's tremendous. Chris, would love to hear about your journey too. How did you find people analytics?
Yeah, thanks, Richard, and thanks, Anthony. That was awesome, and thanks everyone here. I'm honestly excited and humbled to be here. I mean, Anthony and Richard are two that I've looked up to in the field. Richard, we've met over the past few years, and I've had questions. He saves me from some questions I have or helps me out with some things. But I probably am one of those different entry points that Anthony is talking about. So about 10 years ago, I freshly out of my bachelor's program in business. Actually, I joined a small tech company. And doing implementation work, and they're like, "Hey, we need someone that to help support our analytic data functionality of our software." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I like graphs, I like charts, sure, I'll take it on." And so there, I was able to learn some more technical skills about analytics and data in generally. It wasn't until a couple years after that that I actually worked for Workday, which is a popular HR information system right now, and I got hired by them to support their reporting and analytics tool. And I was able to get introduced to the whole world of the HR space on top of the analytics, and that really started interesting me. I started getting into a lot of these groups on LinkedIn, follow people like Anthony and Richard and others to see what they're talking about, what the articles are. And I've always thought that I would like to be in HR. I like business in general, but I was like, I love HR. I love working with people. And I love business, and so I got into the aspect of data on that side of business. But then, as I kept progressing and became more, I worked for other worked with customers and really focused on their analytics piece, reporting piece. I've worked for a consultant group that helps Workday as well. That really got me more and more into metrics and be able to figure out, okay, what metrics do we want to measure here? And I think a big thing too is the way I learned was through LinkedIn, and Anthony mentioned some certification programs out there. I took a couple of those, but really it's just really hands-on and getting into it. Richard, I don't know if you remember this or not, but when we worked for Facebook, I remember talking to you. You were on the way to work, and this is probably 5 years ago. Okay, yeah, and I was like, okay, what do I do here? I'm the only person on my team doing analytics. Where do I start? And what you brought up, and this is something that's echoed, is find what keeps the leaders up at night, and what questions need to be answered. And from there, I was able to learn a lot more. Made some mistakes, but I learned from there and was able to get to where I am today. And I still feel like I'm a infant, maybe a toddler, maybe a little wobbly, walk around toddler in the people analytics space. But to Anthony's point, even 5-6 years ago, there's so much more things out there to really, if you want to dive into it, there's official programs and things like that dive into that you really can get into it. But really, it's just taking what you know. I always use the phrase "faking it till you make it" because you see questions like, I'm not sure, I'll get back to you on that one, and you Google it real quick or look something up. And as long as you're willing to communicate with people, I think it's huge. Communication and being friendly and understanding and asking the right question, I think that's key to really diving in, because you can learn skills. It's just those hard skills, but it's the soft skills that really help you, at least help me get to where I am today, and hopefully a little further in the future.
Yeah, that's tremendous, Chris. I think too, just something you said about kind of feeling like a toddler. I'd say the whole field feels a little bit like a toddler right now. Like I still feel like a toddler in this space. I mean, this space is. I've always been saying this space is about 10 years old, but I'm realizing the space is probably about 15 years old now. I've just been saying that thing a little too long, but even that is still like a blip in the total business history here. To see kind of a function come up and come about and start to kind of swirl together. It's, yeah, if anyone's out there feeling like, hey, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what's next, I'm not sure where I am, that's very normal. I think that's across the board. We're all feeling that. And so it's things like this where we get together and chat. This is helpful. But hey, I'll push a little further. I would love to hear a little bit about your organization. And then if you could speak about how your team is set up too. And Anthony, I'll throw it back to you.
Great. Okay, so I work at Pinterest. So for those who don't know it as well as, obviously like something like Facebook or some of the other ones, is It's more of a visual ideas discovery engine. It's a place where users can go and pin ideas, inspirations, interact and share ideas with others to spur more ideas and get inspired. It's really one of the most kind of positive corners on the internet today, that is really uninterested in things that don't inspire positivity, creativity, and motivation to just do things. So one of the best known things that you'll find with Pinterest is it's a place to find really yummy recipes. I found a really good do-it-yourself tiki bar thing that I'm currently building outside in my backyard. So it's things like that. It gets you inspired and gets you to do things. Really love working here. It's definitely the inspiration that it tries to convey to its customers or its users is the same type of inspiration and creativity we look for internally from our employees. In terms of the team, so I was hired here about 6 months ago to take it, to mature it a little bit more. We're in this wonderful growth mode. There are a lot of foundational things that we're building out this year to create more straightforward, kind of democratized insights. We also dive deeper into kind of quantitative and qualitative data to uncover insights that are critical to both our employee experience and certainly the business. The makeup currently is I have 10 spots. Several of those are obviously filled. One, I have a tools champion who, because we're in this growth mode and we're creating a lot of products and democratizing these products, I have what we call a tools champion who is helping our stakeholders take full advantage of our self-serve products that we're building out this year. So that one's filled, but I have also 2 data analyst positions. One is open, which we'll talk about later about the open positions, but these data analysts are those who take on the asks that are not yet automated or cannot be automated. They consult and advise on requests, on possible solutions, and then use their data mining and stat skills to answer those questions in any way that they can. 2 BI engineers and a data engineer. These are folks who build and automate. 2 data scientists, one who's more of a social scientist, but their job code is 2 data scientists. That I have 2 data scientists. I have 1 program manager for the team who is part-time survey manager, and that's another role that I have open. It's super critical and super important here. The end of, so 2 open positions that we'll talk about later. End of next half, I'll have a couple of other positions open, primarily around like analytics partnerships and things like that.
Anthony, that's tremendous. I'll say from the chat, I know you hit anthropology bingo by saying qualitative. We've got Keith very excited there. But one of the things you said too was take on asks that cannot or have not been automated. And I think that's a really wonderful perspective to take around how do you actually scale this over time and how do you scale a team, that it's not these are people that are just servicing reports, but it's, hey, this is the stuff we're going to do for now until we can actually push that into the platform, push that into the system. So I love that organization, and you've got a tremendous group you're growing.
Thanks.
Chris, we'd love to hear from you too. What is Western Governors University, and could you tell us a little bit about your team?
Yeah, for sure. So Western Governors University, or WGU for short, we're straight online based university. We have over 140,000 students with about 8,200 employees, give or take at the moment. We have been growing pretty significantly, and I've been here for about 3 years now. I guess the best way to describe the current team is scrappy. So we're a smaller team. We're really system based. So I got hired on because of my knowledge and experience navigating the data world of Workday, and those who have experience in there understand that it can be kind of you can get lost in it if you don't understand where you're going. And so I was hired on with a couple other people over the past few years to help out and to really get that going. And what Anthony and Richard, what you brought up too, basically my team's job for the past few years has been to kill Excel Excel's good. Excel has definitely a place. It's good to be scrappy with Excel, but to automate. And we've been able to automate a lot of reports. So it's been a lot of just operational reporting type things to start off with. One thing when I first got WGU, they recently got Workday about a year before, and there were a couple people on the team. There's about 4 people on the team that were running Workday. One wore many hats, and one of them was to do reporting. So we helped back her up. So I got hired on again over the next few years, hire a couple of people to help out. And now our team that supports Workday, and we call it People Tech. There's about 12 of us now, 11 or 12 of us, and myself and the open position we had is primarily the people analytics team, and there's also full time, and then there's also about 2-3 other people that help out that do a little bit of Workday configuration and some data as well. So we kind of have it split out where they'll cover, like one covers our recruiting team, the other one covers compensation. A lot of my job has been the business partners, because a big piece of it, yes, we've done a lot of operational reporting, but there's a lot of strategy to that as well. As we were coming up as a team and talking with our business partners in HR and figuring out what do we even do as people analytics? Like, it's more very entrepreneurial in that sense. And we had to help define and become the authority of, okay, what metrics do we want to measure that really help out? That if you Google HR people analytic metrics, you can find a whole book of them. But what I've always learned and what was told to me before is that it's whatever is relevant for your current organization you're working with. And we were able to do that. And at the time, we had lovely business partners trying to do the best they could. And there was probably 6 to 8 different dashboards in Excel out there that were not automated and that were, it was all good things, but we were able to bring that together, automate that. And now we have, with a lot of work and still ongoing, metrics that have been defined, that we're measuring, that any QBRs, monthly reporting, even live dashboards now, that are all unified from same data source, same formulas, all of that. And because of this work we've been doing too, what we've noticed, and I mentioned earlier before, communication is a huge thing, and earning that trust, is that we've been asked questions that we have to do a little more deep diving now, have to do things that are more research type based, because we have a great foundation. We form that trust with our organization, with our HR executive, all the leaders. And so that's been really key with us too. And so now we're on the next level where we're trying to expand. The position that was open was focus on our people development team to help them, because there's tons of opportunity there. And what we're trying to do is also bring in another tool to help us. Instead of the build versus buy back and forth, we decided to buy. And so that's what we're looking for right now to help kind of grow the team, get us to the next level, is that position, and also a tool to help us get there.
That's awesome. Chris, I love what you said about build the trust over time, because that's really something that some teams will debate, like, is reporting part of people analytics? Does it need to be somewhere else? How does that work? But if you don't have reporting and you don't have visibility into what your teams are asking for and what's top of mind for them, I don't know how you build that trust in the same way. And it sounds like you've done a really tremendous job building that trust over time. And that's led to these investments that you're getting on the team now, which congratulations for that.
And thanks. And I think part of that too is just asking the question, like, why? Like what's the purpose of it? Even a report, because of that, we're able to pull out and we're able to help out pull out what metrics they want to look at. Like, why is that important to you? Like, why is that important to the organization?
That's awesome. And a shout out to Jay Austin, who is a WGU graduate, class of 2011. Nice. He's on the call supporting you here, Chris. And just that's super fun to see. Yeah. So this next one, this is a little bit longer term, kind of looking out into the future here. As you look into your crystal ball for 2023, I would love to hear from your perspective, what topics are coming into the people analytics space, both broadly, but then also locally for your team, because those can be very different sometimes, where it's like the general conversation might be somewhere else, but the reality is my conversation is here. I'd love to get your take on those kind of 2 areas. And Anthony, we'll come back over to you first.
Broadly, I think probably not in the closest near future, but certainly it will continue to be a conversation this year into next, is how does technology, I think, impact our field? One area that I'm really interested in, and I have several perspectives on, and I think I can talk about this and the other topics at length, but I won't, is, how is how are things like generative AI going to impact some of the things that we do? And I do think that's going to it has a lot of attention right now, and I think it's going to get much more attention in the future. But I'm excited about it because it can facilitate a lot of our day-to-day at some point. I don't think it's ready, or I don't think it's going to be near ready to take over jobs yet. I think HR type of data, employee type of data is a bit finicky. There's some ethical issues with it. I think generative AI is getting better, but I think it still needs a person to supervise it. So when it's ready for us, I think there's still going to be there's absolutely always going to be roles, but I think some of the things might change. Some roles might change, but I'm keeping an eye on it. I think it's definitely something that's going to get more attention. There are a lot of cool people analytic type vendors out there that facilitate things like data architecture and BI basics, and a plug for one model. That's obviously one of them. That's a really cool tool. And it helps us focus on the fun stuff, right? And so that could change, like what the makeup is for maybe for my team, for other teams. But it makes the job focused on the things that we really need to deliver the value, like the value laden, insights and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to see like how that plays out. Though the last couple of years, it's definitely an area to consider. In terms of localized, I'll preface this with, I think these are going to be topics that I think a lot of people analytics teams are going to have to deal with. Is that we have to consider that we have this looming recession that we're talking about. People are saying that it's going to come later this year, but that impacts what we focus on, right? That's going to shift our projects. When times are good, we find that we have to help grow our companies, compete for talent. So projects are going to be around that, maybe recruiting, maybe workforce planning, or that type of workforce planning. When times are slowing down, we need to find nuggets to help be more efficient. Workforce planning becomes a little bit more of a thing. During recessions, there's a little bit more of a focus on doing more with less, and upskilling or training becoming more of a focus there. So helping those areas. So I've seen it. I mean, this recession is not my first rodeo. I've seen things play out like this. So I think it's definitely going to shift our topic areas, and it's exciting. I think for our field, one of the reasons why I love my our people in analytics and this choice I made in this career path is that every day is so incredibly new. Every cycle is so incredibly new. If you focus your efforts on and priorities on like what are the business priorities and the macro environment, all those sorts of things, there's so much that you could do, and there's so much value that you can provide to the business. It's not a very drill and rote, cumbersome type of field. And that's what I love about it. And I think these cycles help play into that. And it makes our field more important if it's focused on the right things.
That's absolutely fascinating. Yeah, Anthony, I'd like what you said too about kind of like the broad piece, because we kind of see generative AI just like washing over the field right now. But the reality is there's a lot of local things that are still happening, especially with the economy and keeping track of that. But I like your optimism around that too, where it's the ups and the downs actually provide that variation that makes this field really fascinating. That's a great way to take a look at it too. Chris, let's throw it your way.
Yeah, so I mean, Anthony, those are exactly things that have been in my head too. I'm looking out and comparing to what we're doing WGU wise, but like going back to talking about the generative AI is, I mean, I'm already seeing it becoming part of tools already. They're using, kind of almost using your database, and you can ask questions to find answers, really self-service. That's a huge thing that things as continue to progress is I definitely see a lot of self-service going that direction and making it easier for self-service too. But as Anthony was talking, as I was thinking through the question, definitely workforce planning. So yeah, the recession came to my head too, and how to be the most effective you can be with the skills you have inside the organization, to utilize those and find the right skills to fill the right positions. And that's a constant battle. I feel like it's always, whether a recession or not, there's always a battle to make sure that you have the right skills in place to support your product, support your end users, your students, whatever it may be. And what I'm seeing too is that as thanks to the pioneers in this in people analytics, is that as the business is aware of people data and the effects it can have on businesses, that's how things are progressing. So we mentioned, like, generative AI is we're kind of watching that right now, seeing how it goes. I feel the same way. Like it's not quite there yet. You've got to see what's going on. So some bugs and kinks got to figure out. There's definitely needs to be more of the human aspect with it as well. But as those type of skills, or I guess skills come to play in the business and become more popular, that's what's going to also reflect on people analytics too. Because at least in WG, we see it, like we have a huge research organization for academic side. And so there's data scientists all over the place. We're just this little tiny analytics space right now. But we're starting to take on some really bigger projects like workforce planning, things like that, because our executives are starting to see, oh, okay, like this is something serious. If we want to be more efficient, we should invest the time in our employees for sure. We're spending all this money and time on our students, but our employees, we need to help them out with many different things too. And part of that is having a great tech system and great analytics behind that. And as the businesses discover that, keep realizing that more investment will come into it, because that's key. If you don't have the investment or money to or budget to do those things, you're gonna have the same problems. But as these businesses realize the value, they're gonna invest more money, and these problems can be resolved, and it's gonna grow more and more. I know right now higher ed, it's not huge. People analytics isn't huge right now, and I'm hoping that I can help make that more of a forefront. Other industries, it is really big. But there's a lot of great things you can do, and it's just being a pioneer and understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And I've definitely seen more job postings start popping up in the higher ed space. So as the pioneers in the higher ed space kind of start to get those wins, that knowledge starts circulating out. I think we'll continue to see more investment in that space. But hey, I'll say for everyone on the call here, now's your time to start thinking of some questions. I want to see at least a couple questions in the chat that we could throw their way. I've got one or two more, but I'll definitely default to the ones that are in the chat. So please, we've got these two phenomenal speakers on, people that are interested in the space, that have had experiences. If you have any questions that are top of mind, throw them in there. If they're really too wild, I'll moderate them out, but please get them out there for now. That'd be tremendous. So I'll say let's talk about the open roles on the teams. So Anthony, for the role you're hiring, it sounds like you have two roles. Could you tell us a bit about the role? And then also, what would make them successful in their first 90 days and first year? And you don't have to be incredibly detailed about those two things, but just a high level to kind of give people a sense for what it is you're looking for.
Yeah, so the two roles, data analyst and a people analytics program manager. So currently they're open internally. That's one of the wonderful things about Pinterest, is that we give space for our internal employees to grow into other areas if they wish so. So they are open internally for a little bit of time, and then they'll open externally next week. So if you're curious about the roles, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I will absolutely post them there, and probably post them several times there. So keep a lookout for that. The first that I mentioned was a data analyst type of role, or it's a data analyst role, the people analytics data analyst. So this role is super, super important, for two reasons. Currently, in this kind of framework that we have, we're currently building out a lot of like gappy areas where we don't have some of the automated solutions that our stakeholders need. So we're going to fill in a gap around hey, what insights do you need? What's critical? What questions do you have that can be answered through data? And this person's going to have the flexibility to be able to partner with the business and the stakeholders to understand the need, understand the why, and make the decision on how to answer their question, and certainly distribute it to them or present it to them as they need. So that's one big area. But once we get beyond like this first part of our journey, building out like these solutions, this person will absolutely continue doing the work of, trying to answer the questions that can't be automated, and have the ability to also grow into a proper data scientist role, which are going to be extremely important as we move on in our journey, especially into the later part of this year and into the next year. So not getting too detailed, you'll get more details through the job descriptions there, but that's basically what you're looking at. The type of skill sets that you might find with this person is, querying skills like through a SQL, certainly some either R, Python, KNIME type of skills. Tableau would be nice, but we also have BI engineers who can help you and partner with you to build out those automated solutions as well. The People Analytics Program Manager, also super important role. Pinterest is it's in love with employee sentiment. It really is. Every cycle that we do with engagement type of surveys or life cycle type of surveys, they are really interested in what's happening in the lives of our employees, and really take the suggestions or attitudes to heart to try to build out like our next priorities. For example, by now we're starting to think of like, okay, what do we focus on for FY24, which starts in January? So a super important role with respects to that. This person's going to come in and help us reimagine the employee listening program. And may have the opportunity to think about, how we structure our surveys in a new way. On top of that, because they are the People Analytics Program Manager, they're going to partner with me very, very closely. We have a lot of projects going on. And so this person's going to partner with me on these enterprise, bigger kind of projects to help the team, keep on pace and making sure we're delivering what we're supposed to be delivering.
That's wonderful. I really, excuse me, Anthony, I appreciate that for that data analyst role too. You were saying they might have the opportunity to grow into a data scientist role. Just speaks volume to you as a leader, kind of thinking through that career progression even before you brought somebody on. So I just want to call it out and say thank you for that, because it's one of the things that's nice about working in people analytics is we're analytics, but we're within an HR shop with HR-minded and IO-minded people that know about development and know about career pathing and what that brings to the table. So I appreciate even as you're talking about it, that you're kind of thinking about what that person's career path is within the team.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention what's going to be successful or what's going to help them be successful. Yeah. Learning the business. Certainly, like many people analytics leaders, part of my brand is how do we connect this to business outcomes? So learning the businesses is one. Immersing yourself by meeting people, learning their priorities and projects, finding your stakeholders and cross-functional partners is going to be really important in the first 90 days. Learning our data and our gaps in the data. Getting intimate with the data so that you're able, so you feel comfortable with it and building out your solutions within those 90 days or beyond. And then just asking questions. That's
fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Anthony. So Chris, between the time we scheduled Chris and Chris coming on board, his role has actually closed as they're reviewing applications. So I'm sorry to people on the line here. There are still 310 open roles out there. I just dropped a link into the chat if people are interested in looking at other people analytics roles. But Chris, I would still like to pick your brain here to hear about, as you're looking through the applications that came through, as you're selecting someone for the role, what is it that's going to help somebody stand out, and what's something that will make them successful in their first 90 days? As well as just please tell us about the role you were hiring for too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as Richard mentioned, and I kind of mentioned the role a little bit throughout with the was, because it did close. We had a lot of excitement, a lot of applicants for this position. What's really unique about this is the first time we're going to hire someone with the position as people analytics in it. So it's going to be people analytics partner, because I was hired on as an HRS analyst, senior HRS analyst. And even though I just focus on data, not really configuration too much of Workday or any system, I still have that title. So this is really going to help launch us to have a distinct people analytics practice, and will help as we hire more, as we keep going that direction, be able to help have a career path within WGU for people analytics. So that's why I'm really excited about it. And this particular role is a backfill. The position was on a different team at the time, but we decided to bring it onto our team to centralize all the data analysts within HR. And they'll be focusing on our people development team. So how well are our trainings going, internal employee trainings are going, even survey responses eventually, that's what I'm hoping for, performance reviews. So there's a lot. So there's a lot of potential there, a lot that this person will be doing, a lot in other organizations where this might be 2 or 3 different roles. Maybe in the future we'll get there to have that. And I'm excited to have this because, again, this is going to help launch our team officially and be able to really get our name out there in the sense, because I think a huge part that as data analysts, you kind of forget the communication and the marketing piece of your role. And that's what I love the most about is be able to get out there and network within the organization, even externally, but for sure internally, and get that trust, like I mentioned before. And that's what this role is going to be. To be successful, first 90 days, you have to be a person that's entrepreneurial in the sense where, okay, there's work that right now there's some things that have been done. So it's upkeeping that and seeing if there's a way we can automate it or make it better, but also finding out a way to get more business because there's tons out there. And that would be being able to do projects, get that feedback and that trust in order to generate more projects. That's kind of our culture. That's what we've been doing for the past 3 years. And that's what we're hoping that the person we hire can continue to do that, because that's going to be key. If there's no trust in the person, no trust in the data, your analytics organization fails. And so it's always important. I'm very hypersensitive about that because it's a scary situation when someone comes to an executive meeting and have 2 different numbers for the same, for the same metric. And so that's a big thing, is to be able to pay attention to the details as well. So
that's super helpful. Yeah, Chris, I think even that entrepreneurial piece, that's pretty common across people analytics, because a lot of times our clients don't know that they need what we're selling. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of this education, this demand education to start to build up the demand and then be able to meet the demand, and balancing that. Those analytics business partner roles really play that interesting space of developing the market for these insights, as well as providing the insights.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for all the questions. We have a whole bunch of questions come in, and if we can't get to them today, we'll make sure we get to them in at our next session too. I'm taking some notes here around kind of different themes and topics. So even if you have some questions we don't get to today, please feel free to keep dropping them in the chat, and I'll keep track of those for the next time around. But our first question came from, I believe this person might be in a room. It's P501139. I don't think that's a name. I think that's a room that they dialed in from, and thank you for dialing in from a room.
Well, Star Wars Day, right? So maybe it's sounds like a droid, or
it might be from a droid. Yeah. How does the movement towards skill-based organizations impact people analytics? Which I think is fascinating. And so, Chris and Anthony, whoever wants to take this one first.
Go ahead, Chris. I've been taking them first the whole time, so.
So, okay, can you read that question one more time? The question?
Yeah, how does the movement towards skill-based organizations, so the use of skills in our data sets, the use of skills in the labor market, impact people analytics as a field?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because that's the journey we're starting right now as well, to really tie to different job profiles or different job descriptions, to tie skills to that. And that's something we're going down right now, because the biggest role I see, there's a lot of different things, but it's workforce planning. It's be able to, I mentioned this before, but it's to be the right people and the right skills needed to help serve our student population. And if we can figure out the skills and those that maybe aren't as familiar, there are a lot of skills taxonomies out there, a lot of big databases, essentially hierarchies, if you want to call it that, of skills. One thing that we actually sponsor at WGU is the Open Skills Network. It's a it's a open skills, open type network that we get together with other organizations, and we're trying to form a big taxonomy of skills to help out. And so that's one aspect, is just using that to understand where you need help with skills wise. What will make you better for the fit for this for a certain position, and that would, in my mind, will help out with retention, with a quality of hire type metric. That way we hire the right people.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Chris. Anthony, what comes to mind when you hear skills organizations and people analytics?
It's definitely exciting to me. So ever since Workday first started introducing the capability of adding your skills, your background, all that stuff into its profile capability, I've been trying to advocate my organizations to utilize that more and more. Unfortunately, it's, it does take a concerted effort to do that. But I'm excited about it because it does open up a lot of capabilities. I definitely will agree with what Kristen mentioned. So those are definitely things that I'll align to. It's definitely the workforce planning stuff. It does open up a capability of creating helping our organizations create like matrix teams for, top projects or peak times. It certainly, I mean, there's a lot that I can talk about, like how marrying that with things like ONA, organizational network analysis, could bring a lot of value as well. I think at heart, I'm a data scientist, data analyst. I am more on the technical side. So whenever I see the ability of having more data, I'm always going to say, yes, let me have it. The more data that we have, as long as it's relevant, the greater, deeper insights, the greater value that we can provide to our business. And I think that that's one of those areas that there was a capability for it for a long time. I don't know if it existed before what Workday started doing like about 10 years ago or trying to do. But ever since that started, I just saw a lot of opportunity to be able to facilitate some of the insights that we could potentially get to.
That's fantastic. And it's funny you both mentioned workforce planning, because our next question actually comes from Rupert. And Rupert said, I would love to hear more about workforce planning and what you have seen be successful. And then could you also talk about partnerships with finance along the way, which I think is deeply related to how it's been successful. But I would love to hear both your takes on this. Have you seen workforce planning really take off somewhere? And if you have, could you tell us a little bit about what made that happen?
So I'll take that on. Yeah. Again, Anthony, the whole first half you got first. I'll be the first up the chopping block. But so again, you're probably I don't want to sound like a broken record, but that's something we're actually really focusing on for next fiscal year, which starts for us July 1st, and we're ramping up. Right now, I'm in meetings to really get technology in place for that. But really, I think part of the question that really sticks out to me is that partnership with finance. Right now, we do have a workforce planning, or we have a financial planning tool that also has workforce planning as well. And so we are partnering with finance a lot. What's been great is breaking down those boundaries with other organizations and working together in a business. We have great leaders that have been really amazing at doing that. I think that's probably like key there in order to get things cross the line. So projects, for example, workforce planning, to really understand the importance of that. But finance can offer another side of it. The only problem that we've come across, and not really a problem, but something that my manager and I talk a lot about, is that communication is like be able to let finance know, why is workforce planning important? We're having that right now. It's like, okay, this is cool. I'm not sure why we're doing this. And so be able to understand and clearly communicate the purpose of workforce planning. And it might be one of those things that once we get going and we can see the great outcome of it, it might click. But we're dealing with both finance and, if we're working with financial analysts, we're dealing with data, but it's a whole different data, a whole different ballgame. For example, we look at headcount. Financial people look at FTE, and sometimes we do FTE, but it's be able to come together and understand that piece, because I completely agree, and I'm glad again that finance part was part of the question, because you can't just do this on your own. you have to have a great partnership with finance to make this happen.
And I like
Super
that
helpful.
clarity of purpose as well. I think that's really important, is to be able to say why what's in it for them.
Yeah,
I think that's really good.
better budgets, hopefully. That's what.
Yeah, that's right.
More accurate budgets.
Anthony, what's your take? Have you seen workforce planning really take off somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the pleasure of doing this work in different industries, and it's certainly a little bit more of a focus in some industries and less in others. But there are flavors to it, and certain flavors are at least perceived by the business to be more important or there's more focus on them at certain times than in others. So I think at a high level, workforce planning, I think, is incredibly important because it facilitates the business strategy. And I think that a lot of businesses who don't do workforce planning are often like, just kind of sticking a wet thumb in the air to see where the wind is blowing and guessing that we're going to go this direction or that direction. But I do get why there are flavors to it, because some are easier than others. And a optimal workforce planning effort is definitely a concerted effort cross-functionally. Definitely finance, definitely HR, and definitely specifically recruiting and other areas, the different organizations. I think that it often ticks up at certain times, at least certain flavors of it. I like to call the light version of workforce planning, I like calling it head count planning, which is much more of a data-driven approach to help sustain the productivity of the company. It's not strategic workforce planning where, like I was mentioning before, like if we're doing this right, workforce planning really should be facilitating like business strategy. But for people analytics, there's always there's always value in facilitating, at the very least, sustaining the productivity or improving productivity through like headcount planning, which, like I said, is more of a data effort versus the comprehensive concerted effort of workforce planning.
That's helpful. And Rupert, thank you for posting that job for HubSpot too in the chat. They posted that after I did my update of the roles page, so it hasn't made it.
No,
it's
on your page.
Oh, it's on there. Oh, okay, good. Okay, good.
I just selfishly highlight it because I just think that it's a cool team.
This is about connecting people, so I appreciate that, and thank you everybody for the conversation in the chat. I'm actually going to jump ahead to our final question here, which is still from the chat, but I'm skipping a couple people, so I'm sorry for skipping y'all. But the last one we're going to go with today is: what advice would you give to someone entering the people analytics space in 2023? And the kind of follow-up they had was like, would specializing in an area make sense for long-term employment or demand, like something like workforce planning, or broadly, if you have a piece of advice you'd like to pass on to people that are looking to enter the people analytics world, I think this is a good time to share that with folk.
That's a really good question too. There's a lot of different ways I can go with this. I'm trying to hone in and focus, but I try to keep with the basics. Try to stay focused. So like I think, it's very situational. So in my case, you're trying to relate to myself. First, like don't give up. Like if there's a passion that you have, figure out how to get the skills you need. And I know that's easier said than done. I've been there, done that. There's a time in my career that I was on a really great path, and I ended up getting laid off, and that was really hard, really in a lot of different ways. It's the weirdest feeling I ever felt in my life. But I didn't give up, and now I'm here with WGU now, and this is one of my dream jobs. Like I'm in a great position, great leader, management, things like that to help me get to where I want to go. And so, as far as mentality, don't give up. Follow your gut. If there's something you feel like you can help out with, go after it. If you have an idea, if you're in recruiting, for example, and you want to get into the analytics space, do something in Excel. See if you can get access. Hopefully you have a manager that can support you to get to where you need to go. But on top of that, on your spare time, there are tons of resources out there. As far as specializing in things, for me, that's hard. Personally, it's hard because there's so many great things. You have data science piece, you have workforce planning, you have the surveys and the basic core turnover rates and headcount, all that. I'm lucky enough, gift and curse, I guess, enough where I can touch all of that right now. I don't know what I specialize in, but I really like surveys and workforce planning. Those two things are top of my mind, but there's a lot of great things in there. And so what I've been doing is just give my best effort, and it's getting me to where I need to go. Yes, there've been some step backs, things that are discouraging, but I keep pushing forward, and because of that, I'm getting to where I want to go. And if you're in a time right now where it's a tough time, struggling in different ways, and you want to make a switch, definitely take the time and even a bit of a sacrifice right now to get to where you need to go, to get some skills you need to get going. And I'm always happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn, happy to talk more about this or any more questions you may have. But yeah, just don't give up, keep going to what you're doing right now and keep pushing forward.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for sharing your journey with us today.
Yeah.
Anthony, would love to hear any advice you have for job seekers that are out there.
Yeah, and the asker pointed specifically at 2023. So there's two things that I think about is increasing your chances of getting in is one area, and then after getting in, retaining. Because when I think of 2023, I think of okay, everybody keeps talking about this looming recession, and anything can happen with that. So increasing your chances of getting in and then retaining it. And when I think of that, I think of specializing is probably not going to be the route. I would say becoming a generalist or learning, across different areas, I think increases your opportunity of finding, because there's very few jobs out there that are very specialized. And unless you're talking about the huge teams like maybe Amazon or Facebook that have the ability to kind of specialize some of their people analytic roles and often have those positions, it's not the case across the board, across companies or anything like that. So increase your chances by kind of generalizing your experience or your training around this stuff. Is one area to get in. I definitely look for that because my team is 10. It's not like the 200 or whatever it is with Meta right now. So I do need to look kind of across different skill sets. That's one, and then that also helps for retention purposes. In a recession, I don't know. My teams in people analytics have always been extremely involved in those times to help the employee experience during recessions or strategize around recessions. So I've been really, really lucky around those times. But when you have a broad set of skills, you could do different jobs within any time frame of our cycles, our financial cycle, market cycles. So that would be my suggestion: is get in if they put you in a position, certainly specialize in that, but you have other skill sets is the point.
That's a great takeaway, and I think the piece I'm taking away too, which I don't know if I've ever really considered, is most of the work in people analytics is generalist work. Just by nature of the different teams that are out there, the different people that are out there, it's very rare to find those really hyper specialized roles. So I think that's a really great takeaway. I'll add my piece of advice, which is reach out to your community, come back again. We're going to keep holding these sessions. Our next one is going to be, I believe it's either May 22nd or 23rd. More to come on that. We're moving things around just a little bit with some of the conferences that are happening. And a huge thank you to our guests. If you want to come off mute and give a round of applause or throw the emoji up there. Thank you both. Thank you, Derek, Deborah, Michelle, and the Northwestern team for putting these together. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Anthony.
Hey, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Have a good day.
Bye, everybody.